Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling quote-unquote woke identitarianism, comma, a political expression of moral narcissism undermines itself slash the left. So woke identitarianism sounds like a fancy word. I've used it a few times, and it's something I didn't invent the word, but it's used by a few people. But I think it's a very helpful and descriptive word, even though it's something about quite an unpleasant reality. And I'm using the word woke. I'm using it in a critical way, but I'm not critical of the ideals behind woke. Even though the right wing is in the process of using woke and critical race theory and other words as kind of slander and sloppily, and as kind of a new like Red Scare, similar to the way the right wing used to and still does, you know, shriek about communism and so forth and so on, and socialists and so forth and so on. But the woke identitarianism is, just to sort of to describe it, it's a very pervasive ideology in the center and the left, and it's criticized by some people. And it's not used by people who subscribe to it. It's a description from outside by me and a few other people, but it's an idea that basically that people's biological identities, or how they're born, including their skin color, their sex, or their sexual orientation, or their gender identity, is the primary source of their value, and their virtues are largely associated with that. And even though, as I say that, no one who subscribed to it would say those words in the way I said it, and they would just act as if that's the case. And so what woke identitarianism does, and it's been around for about 40 years or so, it's a product of, it's sort of a devolution, okay, of the social movements of the 1960s and 70s, early 70s, into a particularistic rather than universalistic movement, okay, that basically people started to, it's identity politics, okay? People talk about identity politics. That's more widespread but it's people who play identity politics as the only politics that they have, or that if it's not the only politics they have, it's a cover for a corrupt politics that they don't want to talk about, that they want to cover over with their identity. And that happens also on the right wing. In other words, the right wing plays identity politics too, and they cover over their corruption and their ripping off of Trump does this all the time, of the American people, by playing up, the injured identities of basically white people in rural areas and in suburbs and so forth and so on, and people who feel like they are excluded, okay, from power, or they excluded from let's say the cultural center of contemporary America, and which is multiracial, multi-ethnic, and so forth and so on. And but anyway, the woke identitarians sort of have the inverted pyramid in a way. So white supremacists like Donald Trump and others sort of create a pyramid of value of implied of sort of castes where the white male is on top, and then down you go down the list and so forth and so on, and it's a recognizable, you know, caste system or caste system, even though we don't actually formally have a caste system in the United States. But it might be helpful to talk about it and to try to bring it to light that we act as though we have one. But anyway, woke identitarianism inverts that and basically says that it's the other way around. Okay, that the people who are most oppressed are on top, have the most value. Okay, and the people who are the most privileged, not so much economically. So economics, class, and class identity or class position falls away in woke identitarianism. So identities are mostly what you can see, what you can, and which not what you can see in terms of possessions or in terms of, position in the economy and so forth and so on. It's they're literally physical, biological, and to some degree cultural identity, and that becomes the sum. Politics starts to be a process by which you negotiate privilege. So privilege. They talk a lot about white privilege, and white privilege does exist, and and other kinds of privilege also exist, but it becomes the sum total of, or if not the entire sum total, it becomes a big preoccupation within people's interactions and so forth and so on. So people talk a lot about different microaggressions and so forth and so on, which happen. It's not like that kind of thing doesn't happen, but it becomes this sort of jockeying for position and for who is most virtuous. So this is where moral narcissism comes in. So moral narcissism is about showing oneself to be a better person because of some ideals that one might be associated with, or because of, in the case of woke identitarianism, because of by nature of one's skin color or sex or so forth and so on, that's inverted from the patriarchal white supremacist homophobic sort of assumptions of let's say America of 50, 70, 80, 100 years ago, and so anyway, so that politics and that is very, very pervasive, and so anyway, but the moral narcissism component is that people are motivated to defend themselves against the idea that they're bad people in some way or another if they don't either associate themselves with woke culture or woke, and on the other hand, there's not there. I am for the ideals and for being anti-racist and inclusive and telling the story of oppression, people's oppressions, and remedying those oppressions with actual concrete policy that also acknowledges at the same time that we are all human beings, okay, that we're all people, and that we want to create as inclusive a policy as possible, as inclusive a politics as possible. But often in woke identitarianism, it becomes a very closed, and even within the communities, okay, of people who have the characteristics that woke identitarians value more, for instance, African American people or women or so forth and so on. The people who are so wrapped up in this are not considered to be uniformly leaders of those, or they're controversial. But within the political bureaucracy of the Democratic Party, it's used as a cudgel often to exclude, among other things, progressive and universalistic ideas about humanity, and it's more about who is a member of the club of people who are who have the markers of a particular historic oppression and or existing oppression, and then they do policy in terms of actual where the actual rubber meets the road. They make corporate policy, so it has become an excuse for corporate corporate politics, for corporatist politics, for supporting the corporate oligarchy. Okay, by just putting a face that is a woman, a face that is African American, a face that's Latinx, a face that, you know, in front, and saying, look, we have this woke thing. I mean, they don't use that word. They don't talk this way, but we are virtuous by nature of our CEO or by nature of, you know, our spokesperson, and or the actors that appear in our ads, even, you know, if we're talking about a corporation. But but also, I mean, in politics, I mean, it's very, very clear that you know, for instance, Bernie Sanders in 2016 and also in 2020, multiple efforts were made by some sincere groups, sincere concern groups, but also some very Machiavellian groups, some to try to attack Bernie Sanders as a, or Machiavellian individuals, try to attack Bernie Sanders as a sexist, as potentially a racist, or certainly out of step with racial politics as they exist now, and he, you know, it was hard for him to defend himself against these things because of the predominance of woke identitarianism as a political backdrop, and the politics of the Democratic Party. I mean, this is so. It's hard to discuss this in the course of a short video because this is kind of in the air, not in the general society overall. I mean, it's to some degree, but within political circles, within the circles where people are jockeying for political power, for, you know, and so, which are not, you know, all circles, but the people who make it through that process are the people who stand for election, and so they are sort of so to speak vetted through a woke identitarian in the left, in the center left, through a woke identitarian calculus, or they need to make some certain concessions to, and certainly in terms of image, that they need to show that they are virtuous people. And and the sort of the most consequential expression of this was the Democratic Party and its strategists basically committing itself to a strategy in, let's say, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago of basically, and this was discussed publicly and openly, that that demographics would of America, the so to speak Browning of America or whatever, or the eventual event when you know, white European people would be a minority, which is become an obsession for, you know, the Republican Party, or is an obsession for the Republican Party, and the white supremacists in that party, obviously, that the Democrats were sort of putting all their chips on the idea of saying, well, you know, we'll just let the demographic trends just go, and then we'll have a permanent majority. Okay, and so I find this, you know, it's unbelievable to me that anybody who is a political strategist or a politician or you know, an official of a party would, you know, basically be wishing for the demise demographically of certain groups, even if that was going to happen anyway. Okay, and not to go overboard and say, well, no, let's have a pronatalist policy so they don't go over, well, which is what the neo-fascist right wing is now doing. So you see that this is the neo-fascist and woke identitarians are really mirror images of themselves, of each other. So, and they are the you could say their beliefs that are so attached to identity are very close to being racist and sexist. Okay, are they exactly the same thing? Because they're looking at it from sort of, they've inverted the pyramid of caste or whatever you want to call it, of and they're saying, well, no, we're for inverting it. We want women on top, or we want black and brown people on top, and so forth and so on, and so that's good. That makes us good. It's like, well, no, the good thing to do is have a universalistic idea that all people should be equal. Okay, and this is, of course, they say, well, no, of course that's what I meant, but that's not how you talk, and that's not how you act. Okay, and that's not how the Democratic Party acted, and now the Democratic Party is now trying to sort of, in a way, is going in the direction of abandoning that to some degree, and now going for the white suburban vote and so forth and so on, trying to engulf what they think is the moderate Republican base in the suburbs, and those who are disgusted by Trump and Trumpism, and so they sort of have kind of turned away from the woke identitarian. They haven't totally turned away from it, but they're trying to do both of these strategies, and actually the problem, one of their problems is that they assumed that people with certain racial and ethnic demographics would be automatically would support them no matter what they did, and that's and now they're furious. Now the black community is furious with, or not the black community, but many black activists are, when seeing how listlessly the Democrats have addressed voting rights, they're very angry, and I wouldn't be surprised if voter turnout is very low in 2022 among people who are concerned about voting rights, some of whom are African American, let's say, and so and Latinx. So anyway, so woke, to me at least, that political turn, which is still part of the common sense of the Democratic Party, is about woke identitarianism in a way. It's not the most. It's a kind of a bureaucratic one. But it's still, it's attaching to identities, and also it's basically using, as I was saying a few minutes ago, using the appearance of being, anti-sexist, anti-racist, to continue on with a pro-corporate, a pro-ruling class, a pro-capitalist policy. So it becomes a distraction. Okay. So anyway, and it's kind of hard to criticize this in a way, and again, partly because I'm excluded from this charm circle of people who have particular identities, and anyway, I sat in rooms actually with many people who are older than me when we were trying to do some climate activism in the Bay Area of California, and there was an obsession among the people there that they weren't focusing on the issues, and they were focusing more on basically attempting to appear woke, okay, and and not on the issue of climate and cutting emissions and getting people to bike more and getting people to use more electric cars, or to go to renewable energy. It was mostly there was so much. I just, if I were a person from one of those groups and sort of kind of not used to this elaborate you know, form of kabuki theater, you know, I would feel uncomfortable. I would think, you know, these people are objectifying my skin or whatever it is, you know, or maybe I would have the wonderful sense of being valued and, you know, and overvalued and cherished for being, you know, I don't know, but it depends on the individual. But anyway, it's I think that universalistic programs that address more people, or you know, certainly solidaristic, inclusive programs, if not universal, at least you know, and politics are where the left should have been heading and should be heading now, and woke identitarianism is a roadblock to that form of politics, and it's also used consciously as a strategy by Machiavellian players to undercut that kind of a politics, and it's wrong. It's just you know, I mean, that's my opinion, and there are people who are imbued with this who would say, no, I'm wrong, and I'm just, you know, a bad old guy who doesn't understand. But I've seen it grow up, and you know, and I become increasingly critical of it, because it seems to derail almost every attempt to do progressive things, other than the symbolic installation of people, of individuals in positions of power, who, like Barack Obama, who I campaigned for in 2008, and supported over Hillary Clinton, and you know, and that was a great you know, a few moments or whatever of you know, electing the first black president of the United States, but then you know, it basically was empty, you know, in the sense of it. He was as you know, slightly to the right of center, and or more than slightly to the right of center in certain issues, and not at all uplifting either, you know, the black community, and also other than being the symbol, okay, being and you know, and he had great political talents, but he didn't use them for the greater good enough, or hardly at all. I mean, there were certain issues certain advances he made, but they were way too measured at the wrong time, at a time when, you know, and also, you know, the Democratic Party lost enormous amounts of ground in 2010, which we're still dealing with, you know, in our politics. And again, you know, this, just to again remind you, this woke identitarianism is the mirror image of right wing, and for that matter, even the progenitor to some degree. Not entirely. The right wingers are responsible for their lies and their racism and but that certainly the Democratic Party becoming the party of sort of individual meritocratic advancement of certain symbolic individuals some of whom are you know, from these identity groups, from people of color or women or, you know, whatever, but and using them as sort of you know, exemplars, but not providing a substantive politics of advancement for many people, or certainly not putting enough effort into that for the broad communities, both the communities for which those exemplars come, in terms of their you know, in terms of their whatever their genetic appearance, or you know, whatever their expression of their biological, I hate using these words, but anyway, just their identity, as you know, it wasn't really helping those people in many ways to have this kind of icon, and it was Anyway, so I'm descending a little bit into incoherence here because it's an issue that I am just it's tragic in a way that the left has been so identified with it, and also that it creates a huge target for the right wing to just continue on with their spinning off into their fascist ways, and creating a minoritarian state with the power that they have in state houses, and also maybe even the federal government, through the Senate and the Supreme Court and so forth and so on. So it's again a support for exactly that neo-fascist or authoritarian, minoritarian, whatever false sham democracy we may be heading toward very soon. So anyway, so if you got something out of this video, please like it, and also please share your thoughts on this really controversial topic, and whether this is helpful to talk in terms of woke identitarianism or not. And it's, again, just to break into, it's an effort to break apart what I consider to be true progressivism from a form of fake progressivism, or what's being marketed as progressive, or being accused of what progressivism from the right wing. So, but anyway, so if you're liking generally the content on Politics 2100, please also subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.